So here we are at Assateague Island, which is in the same zip code as Berlin, Maryland. And we just had a great 24 hours in Berlin, Maryland. We met a lot of really nice people. We met Mayor Williams, and we heard a lot of really good stories. I hope some of those stories end up on the website at some point. But we've had a really great time. Everybody's been really supportive. I definitely think that if the kind of support continues that we've seen from Berlin, Maryland, from the other Berlins, this will be a fantastic project. So we're really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
I think it was really exciting. It felt for me like a dream because we decided on such short notice to visit Berlin, Maryland, and the most outstanding thing for me was how welcoming the Berliners were. Everybody was just happy that we were there and was really excited to hear about the project and about our idea. And yeah, it was just amazing to see how friendly and open-hearted the people were.
We had a really great time last night at the Berlin, Maryland Art Stroll, which is a cultural event in Berlin, Maryland that happens second Friday of every month. There's a couple different shops and galleries that open their doors and people come by and see what's going on. So it was a good chance to interact with the creative community in Berlin, Maryland.
We visited the Atlantic Hotel, that's where we stayed. We went to a store called Tada, where we bought actually a nice bag for the beach. Then we went to a place called The Globe, which is a restaurant, and they also have live music there. We actually saw an amazing band at night after the art stroll. The band was called Hot Buttered Nuggets. You're laughing.
It's funny.
It is really funny.
It's a funny name.
And the guy looked a little bit like Elvis Presley. He could play like saxophone and trombone and some other instruments with his mouth, and it was so fascinating and amazing. If you wouldn't look at the band and you just heard him, you couldn't tell if it's you just thought it's a real saxophone. Today we went to the library where we talked to the manager of the library, and she was also very friendly. Then we went to a video store. It was very funny because the people who own this video store actually lived in Germany for a while. The woman was speaking German, and she lived, I think, close to Saarbrücken. We talked to the postman. We took a picture with him, and he told us a nice story. He told us that sometimes packages from Berlin, Germany end up in Berlin, Maryland. They were shipped from Germany to arrive in Germany, but they arrive in the United States. We went to a bakery which just opened, I think, a week ago. And the people were very nice and excited that we dropped by because they didn't have time the last evening to visit us at the Atlantic Hotel. So they gave us the Berlin, Maryland dessert, which is a peach dumpling.
This Berlin is pretty special. It's right here on the water. You see this is the Atlantic Ocean behind me that you see right now. And I think it's maybe the only Berlin that shares a zip code with a coastline on the ocean. And this island, Assateague Island, is a really beautiful place. It even has wild horses. And we're really glad to be here right now. The best story that we heard in the past 24 hours from Berlin, Maryland is actually a love story. And I won't name any names, but it's about a guy who met a girl who was waitressing at a Mexican restaurant in Berlin, Maryland city limits. And he was completely stricken with her, but he was scared of her father, and so he didn't say anything to her really very much. She just sort of said hi, but was a little nervous because her father looked kind of intimidating, and he was the boss at the restaurant. And from what I recall, the story goes something like he gave her his number, and they got together like a couple days, and they were pretty into each other. But at the time, he had another girlfriend, so it was a little weird, and she sort of didn't want to see him anymore once she found out that he had another girlfriend. So some time passed. Actually, 5 years passed, during which the guy lived in different places, and so did the girl. In fact, it turns out they were both living in Miami, Florida at one point, without even knowing that each other were there. And Oh, I'm leaving out one part of the story that's very important. So early on, when they were dating, when they first met, and they only dated, I think, a couple days, basically, she had to run an errand and go to the nursery to buy some plants. And he went along with her and bought a plant to give to her mom as a present. And so when they arrived at her parents' house, he presented this plant, and her mom, who didn't speak any English, was really happy to get the plant. And apparently, over the course of the 5 years afterwards, the girl's parents always remembered this boy who had given them this plant, and they'd thought of him very fondly. And eventually, the guy, after a lot of reflection and thinking about many different relationships he had, decided that this short-lived romance with this girl that he'd given the plant to her parents, that was somehow the most meaningful one he'd ever had. And so he had no other choice but to actually get in touch with the girl's father in order to make contact with her, because he didn't have her phone number. He happened to have the father's phone number because it was the same as the restaurant. And wouldn't you believe it, when he called up, the father didn't remember him at all. He made a compliment about the great soup that he'd had at the restaurant. And then slowly but surely, the father remembered that the boy had given them a plant. And he mentioned it to the mom, and they were really excited, actually, because they had always liked him. So they gave him the number of the girl, and he called up the girl, and she didn't really trust him at the beginning. And so he actually came all the way out to Berlin, Maryland to see her again. I think he came pretty far. I don't remember if it was from California or from where he traveled, but he ended up in Berlin, Maryland, at her doorstep, basically, asking her to go out with him. And she wasn't going to do it, and her mom actually convinced her to go out with him. She said, "This boy's come all the way, and he brought us the plant." And so she did end up going out with him, and they actually got married 2 years ago, and they're still together today. And we met them last night, and it was really fun hanging out with them and hearing their story. So I think that was actually the nicest story we heard while we were here. And we got to see the plant, which is alive and well, and much bigger than it was when it was first gifted to the girl's mom 5 years ago.